On today's Top 10 video, we're taking a look at the 10 hardest Dungeons & Dragons adventures. Please stick around. I'm AZ Mountaineer. This is our channel, Old School Rules, where we celebrate the community of old school gamers and grognards who like classic RPGs, miniatures, magazines, and everything that goes with it. The Top 10 series is an opportunity to take a closer look at something particular in the hobby. Today we're taking a look at the top 10 hardest Dungeons & Dragons adventures. This was a suggestion from one of the viewers of an earlier video, and I'm glad to take a look at these campaign settings and modules that were most likely to leave your favorite characters on the ash heap of history. Hope you enjoy the video. Today's video should be a lot of fun. I hope you have your top 10 list ready, and let's count down and take a look at my top 10 hardest Dungeons & Dragons adventures. As I mentioned in the lead-in, this came from a comment, Coach Larry 6773. I appreciate you making the suggestion for the idea for today's video, and I hope you'll enjoy it. Certainly, you guys aren't going to agree with all of my thoughts here. There's no such thing as right or wrong answers when it comes to something like this, although I think the case can be made for some of these to certainly be on everyone's list. Here's what I thought of in terms of what made something one of the hardest adventures. I only looked at official Dungeons & Dragons products. I assumed you're using characters that are of the published level. Some of these had pre-gen characters in there, but regardless, it would assume you had characters of that level. And I assume it's going to be DM'd what I call sort of straight up. So you're playing the monsters in a way that's strategic, that's crafty, whatever it is, not trying to give the characters any breaks, not trying to kill people just for the sake of doing it, but certainly challenging the characters to overcome all the obstacles fair and square, to overcome all the saving throws if they can, fair and square, no second chances, no divine intervention, no DM rolling behind the screen, one way or the other. And here just I have the logos because I like them, TSR through the year. So these are all going to be TSR published adventures as opposed to third-party products. That would kind of make this list way too broad, I think. So here are the adventures that I considered. As you can see, these are all official products from the late 70s, early 80s, up through probably mid 80s, I think, are where these adventures stopped. I did not consider the RPGA adventures in my list. I'm not as familiar with those. The ones I considered are all adventures that I either played or DM'd or have read through several times. I also did not consider the Dragonlance adventures, just because I sort of feel like they're their own thing and certainly designed more to tell a story than to necessarily be as challenging as some of these others in terms of risk of death to your characters. All right, so we pull back the red curtain and we're going to take a look at the top 10 hardest Dungeons & Dragons adventures. Number 10 on my list is The Lost Tomb of Mtek. It is the third part of the Desert of Desolation series, which started with the Pharaoh and I3 and had I4. What I think is particularly challenging about this adventure, there's lots of traps and tricks and things like that the party's got to be able to overcome in here in addition to monsters, and I think those things oftentimes are a little more challenging than straight up combat for players. And this one takes you on some really wild rides with teleportation and trips to sort of other planes. In particular, there's a section where you go to a place called the Black Abyss, and distance, time, and magic stops working like normal, and so I think those kind of things really tend to throw a lot of players for a loop. And so those are the general reasons why this makes my start for me at number 10. At number 9, I've got one that most of us probably know really well. This is an introductory module. It's called The Village of Homelet, written by Gary Gygax. It was released in the monochrome series and then re-released when they changed the covers, colorized them, if you will. But the adventure stays pretty much the same, and it's a really hard adventure given that you've got first level characters, second level characters in there. Lots and lots of things in the town itself can be the end for your characters if they take it in the wrong direction. And if you make it that far and you get to the ruins of the moat house, pretty much every encounter in there is one die roll away from killing a character. Heck, you might not even make it inside, right? Those giant frogs have been known to eat more than one character in the history of D&D, that's for certain. Number 8 on my list is The Lost Caverns of Sjan. Great adventure. It was a tournament adventure that Gary wrote and then was later changed a little bit and made and re-released in this format. For me, one of the Lost Caverns is an adventure that, depending on how your party plays, especially if they like to complete things, it can really grind your party down. Like, there's just a lot of very difficult encounters where a bad saving throw or a couple bad dice rolls can cause you to lose a character. It's not a place where you have a lot of opportunities to necessarily hole up and sleep for a day or two and just heal your party up a bunch. And so you're also at that risk of wandering monsters. And as I say, if you make it sort of all the way through the maze and all the other challenges, lots of new monsters you've never heard of before, at least in theory. There's a demi let you in here, and if you make it all the way to the end, you're rewarded by a very potentially deadly encounter with a woman that acts as if you're rescuing her, and she turns out to be a vampire. She might charm, especially if you have a male party, several members of the party before she either kills the rest of you or level drains the heck out of you. And so I just think this can be a really challenging adventure if it's played straight up. The next one for me is The Hidden Shrine of Temujin. Like this one a lot. I think it's a really fun adventure. Love the art, of course, as well, and it's one of those that has the extra booklet that has art in it for you. The thing I think is, this was a tournament module as well. The thing that is particularly challenging or deadly here is the use of this noxious, poisonous gas that's in there. If for whatever reason your party doesn't realize that they need to cast slow poison to enable you to lessen the amount of damage, your characters are just going to slowly have their hit points sort of drained away in here. I mean, it depends on how the dungeon master plays it. I don't think you should be just told. If I were the dungeon master, I'd be rolling and just keeping a secret tally of the poison damage. I'd tell you things like, oh, you're coughing, you don't feel well, it's whatever, hard to breathe. But I wouldn't tell you where your hit points are going. I'd be keeping that on the side, so you never knew how much extra damage you'd taken from the poison. And that poison damage is 1d6 per turn if you don't cast the slow poison spell. And here's the really tricky part, though. If you cast the slow poison spell and you don't keep track so that you cast another one before it expires, and again, a dungeon master playing straight up would not help you with that, right? She would keep track of the passage of time. But anyway, if that spell expires, the dungeon master, you only take 1 point per turn, but the dungeon master is still rolling every turn. And as soon as it expires, all that additional damage instantly accelerates, and you take it all at once, which seems crazy to me. But that could be devastating. I mean, that could be several d6 worth of damage you take unexpectedly in a tournament setting where you're already pressed with lots of challenging encounters and potentially not stopping and getting yourself healed up over and over again from your cleric. Because remember, if you stop to do that, then time passes and that poison is stacking up, right? So you're really pressured in this dungeon to keep moving, so it's not likely that you'll do that. Number 6 for me is another Gygax module. It is Descent into the Depths of the Earth. This is the combined D1-2 version. One of the things that I think that is really challenging about this adventure is if your characters are the kind that like to just sort of plow forward and work your way through a trap or a trick, see something alive, you attack it, and you kill it, this could prove to be a very deadly adventure module, because there are a lot of drow in here, which are, again, at this point, for most characters would not have understood what they were, or the special abilities that they had. If you use drow with their special abilities well, they can become really, really difficult opponents. There's an encounter in here with mind flayers, or illithids, as I think they like to call them now. And those creatures played straight up are really, really difficult because they have sonic abilities, again, if you're using that. But it would, one way or another, you got to give them those mental powers, right? And those are going to be really difficult because they ignore armor class, etc. There's tons of other creatures in here. There's a lich in here. I mean, characters 9 to 14 in terms of level. That can be a really deadly opponent. And again, you've probably already been sort of grinding down through all these other encounters by the time you hit that lich, so you might not have all your spells. You might be down on hit points. This could be really, again, really, really difficult for a group of adventurers. Next one on my list is White Plume Mountain by Lawrence Schick. It's a great adventure. You probably remember it because it has these 3 really cool magic items that you're after in there, and every player that I knew always wanted to have one or more of those to keep forever. So one of the things I like about this adventure is I think that it's a little bit different. There's a lot of traps and so forth that you got to work your way through. The encounters can be really hard. You know, that one of the special weapons is guarded by a vampire, and this is levels 5 through 10. And vampires played deadly, the way they should be, are really, really difficult opponents for a party this level, I think. I mean, that alone probably is going to kill some characters, potentially TPK, if some rolls go the wrong way. And again, just a lot of traps and other things that can either take out characters or really weaken your characters before they hit a hard encounter. Make White Plume Mountain, I think, one of the more challenging adventures. We're back with more from the D series. This is Gary Gygax, and this is Vault of the Drow. Again, character levels 10 through 14, but here you're really exposed to a whole world of Drow. Deadly opponents for characters who don't have the good sense to try and either sneak their way through here, or try to perhaps get some allies from the, how do you say that, Sverfneblin, the Deep Gnomes, or some other group that might maybe helps you fight through or get past some of these Drow. This module is really stacked against the characters, and then again, if they get into a big fight and attract the attention of the Drow in mass, it's going to be a complete death event for the party, because there could just be hundreds and hundreds of Drow come out with all the special abilities they have, the priestesses with their spell abilities on top of the fighting abilities and the poison darts and all the rest. It's going to be game over for a lot of parties. Number 3 on my list, a fantastic adventure. We could talk a lot of things about Ravenloft and how amazing it is. Tracy Laura Hickman, Strahd the Vampire. And again, a vampire played correctly is an extremely difficult opponent. It's super intelligent, has all kinds of different abilities it can use, can escape from the party, so as to avoid its death to come back again. And the way you have to work through this, I mean, Strahd could easily interact with the party more than once, killing them slowly, charming people, etc. He's a great antagonist for your party, and this is a great adventure module in and of itself, but it's also extremely, extremely deadly. Only for levels 5 through 10, so you're really not ready, in my opinion, to take out what has come to be known as sort of one of the great vampires of the D&D world. Number 2 on my list is Queen of the Demon Web Pits, and this sort of, I guess, completes that D series. It is really hard modules, I think, if played correctly. So, I mean, what more can you say? You've already gone through all the other things with the Drow and so forth. This one can be challenging because it's really can be sort of disorienting and confusing for the party. There are all kinds of high-level monsters in here. You can encounter, demons. You can encounter Loth herself, Loth, however you guys say it, the Queen of the Demon Web Pits. I mean, she's in the Deities and Demigods book, and so she's at a whole other level of powerful, and of course if you play her intelligently and she's gating in demons, and those demons can gate in more demons, the odds can turn against the party really, really quickly. And remember, Drow have those innate abilities, and so before you get to Loth, you may be hit with darkness, you may be hit with silence, making your spellcasters unable to sort of even the odds, right? And so the adventure itself is challenging just in the structure of it, and then the potential encounters you have as you work your way through this. Again, you're using your spells as you go, you're losing hit points as you go. Here and there, a bad die roll, you lose a character or two, and now the odds really start to stack against you. It makes this a really, really difficult adventure to play your way through to the end. Well, there's probably no surprise. It's probably number one on most people's list to start with, but at this point, probably no surprise what's number one on my list, and that is Gary Gygax's Immortal Killer Dungeon, The Tomb of Horrors. I don't have to give away a lot of the spoilers, but this thing is, as you know, if you've ever played it, full of traps that are instantly deadly. It is full of very difficult encounters with the undead that are in here as well. Super intelligent, super powerful undead that can kill you if you make it that far. And lots of character sheets have been left on the dustpan of history trying to make their way through Gary's adventure. And anyone who's never played through it before, who doesn't cheat, doesn't read it, doesn't know what's coming, it is really, really hard to honestly say you could make it through this adventure module. I would guess 10% maybe of characters legitimately could make it through this adventure without any prior knowledge of the adventure and the traps, with the die rolls, etc. I just think it's really, really hard to do. So that's it for the top 10 countdown. If you want to learn more about adventures, there's all kinds of great resources for you. Lauren Schick, who wrote one of the adventure modules we mentioned, right, White Plume Mountain, has his book, Heroic World, which lists all these adventures, gives you a little snippet about them. The Assaeum website is fantastic, best resource on the web, in my opinion, for anything Advanced Dungeons and Dragons early days that you might want to look at. RPG Geek, Role-Playing Games Geek website, great resource. Tome of Treasure is also another great resource, and there's lots of great Facebook groups you can join and learn more about anything early days Dungeons and Dragons that might be of interest to you. That's it for today's video, our top 10 look at the hardest Dungeons and Dragons adventures ever created. I hope you guys are enjoying the video. Hope you're subscribed, and if you have friends who might enjoy our content, please send them our way. We'd hope they'll be subscribers as well. That's it for today, and until next time, my friends, keep rolling 20s.